Welcome back to the Joyful Catholic Leaders Show, where you'll hear stories and insights from those who lead with faith, from the seminary, to the parish, to the classroom, to the office, to the sports field, and everywhere in between. Today, we've got a pre-recorded conversation with a seminarian who's on the cusp of the priesthood. Transitional Deacon Mike Selenski worked with Focus for over half a decade before discerning that seminary life was the next step for him. We talked to him about that journey, what the Saint Paul Seminary has been like during a pandemic, his excitement to officially join the priesthood this spring 2022, and more. Before we get started, just a reminder, you can subscribe to the Joyful Catholic Leaders Show wherever you find your podcasts, and follow both the Saint Paul Seminary and St. John Vianney College Seminary on social media and at semssp.org. New episodes will drop every month on the first Friday of the month. And now here's that conversation with Deacon Mike Selenski. Hi there, this is Phil Irvin, Director of Marketing and Communications for the Saint Paul Seminary, and I am delighted and honored to be joined today by Deacon Mike Selenski, originally from Coon Rapids, Minnesota. He is in Theology 4 this year, transitional deacon studying for the priesthood. He is planning on being ordained in the spring of 2022. Deacon Mike, thanks for joining us today.
You bet.
Appreciate it. So we'll get right into some questions here, and the first one is simple. Why have you chosen to prepare for the priesthood? What made you want to pursue this life?
I think the short answer would be that I think that the Lord has called me to this life, that He's made me to actually be a priest. And it took me years to really be open to that reality. Probably took until about my mid-20s to even really take that question seriously. But as a young man who has been transformed by the Lord and has fallen in love with the church, I think I had to start asking the question, is God calling me to this life? We believe that the Lord calls young men to be priests, and I think as I started growing in my faith, and as I was a part of an organization called Focus, I started to ask the question, well, Lord, am I one of those men that you're calling to be a priest? And I couldn't ignore the question, and it lingered with me for many years. But eventually I took the plunge, primarily because I just had something that resonated in my heart, that this is the life that God has kind of set aside for me and is calling me into to serve His kingdom and to bring souls to Him.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little more about Focus and kind of your involvement with that organization, and then maybe how that sort of led you eventually to the seminary, how that played into things.
Sure. So for those of you who don't know, Focus stands for the Fellowship of Catholic University Students. It's a collegiate outreach, so a group of Catholic missionaries that work on different college campuses across the entire country. And so they usually send teams of 2 men and 2 women who have recently graduated college and have been through the challenges of college themselves to really be ambassadors for the kingdom, to evangelize, to lead Bible studies, to disciple young men and women in their relationship with the Lord, and to hopefully set their hearts on fire for Him. So I first discovered Focus through a friend of mine through college. So she had gone through a big conversion experience at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. And that's a big Focus campus with a lot of involvement and a lot of students and a lot of Focus missionaries that come out of that campus. And at the time, I was actually studying at the University of St. Thomas. I studied business entrepreneurship, and I had a job all lined up before graduating college. And then last minute, this friend of mine from Nebraska had told me about Focus. I had never heard of it before, and she had been praying for me, and she had been really kind of pounding on my door to get me to open up my mind and heart to the idea of serving as a Focus missionary. I told her no about 3 or 4 times, and eventually she called me one more time, and she just said, I really think you need to be open to this. I don't understand why you wouldn't be open to it. Either it's God's will for your life or it's not. And either way, there's fruit to be had from knocking on the door. So long story short, I knocked on the door, and I realized there was something so attracted about the idea of giving my life to the Lord in this way and serving in this capacity. And so it was many, many fruitful years. I served with the organization for 6 years, 2 at the Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, and then 3 at Harvard. And then my last year, I was a regional director for the West region.
Awesome. Very good.
I don't know what the original question
Sure.
was.
No, that's great. And then from there, I mean, how did that sort of lead you to pursuing seminary after that? How did that transition kind of come about?
Sure. Focus was very instrumental for me because there were years of a lot of fun growth, honestly. I felt like I was learning so much about my Catholic faith for the first time and learning what it was like to develop a prayer life and a love for the church and for the sacraments. Something that I don't know how much I really had before. And growing alongside of a lot of young, vibrant Catholic people who were contagious and joyful and normal, it just helped shape the way that I wanted to live my life and the man that I was becoming. And my years in Focus, so usually it's a 2-year commitment with Focus. I ended up doing 6 years because every year I just wanted to come back and keep serving in this way. And I think the most instrumental part in my own vocational journey was the fact that as a Focus missionary, like reaching out and building relationships with young, struggling college students who are just trying to find their way, and being able to be an instrument in their lives that could lead them to the Lord and to lead them to happiness, and to see young people's lives transformed, there was nothing more joyful for me to do. It just resonated with who I was, and it just felt like this is the man that God made me to be. And so it opened up my mind and my heart to the idea of serving God's kingdom through the priesthood, that I could see myself actually joyfully laying down my life and giving it to him in a more radical way, to be a part of people's conversions. Because at the end of the day, I think it's the only thing that matters, is our relationship with God, the God that created us. And he has a purpose for our lives, and if I can be an instrument that helps awaken and lead people to discover that reality, then I want to do that.
Great. So you took the plunge, ended up at Saint Paul Seminary, representing the Archdiocese of Saint Paul, Minneapolis. And I'm sure the time has gone by fast, but you're kind of in the home stretch here now a little bit. What have been maybe just 1 or 2 of your favorite memories of seminary life up to this point, now that you're in the final year? Sure.
One tremendous blessing, I think, is to be able to build relationships with other guys. The call to be a priest is obviously kind of a unique thing. And to be in an environment where you're not alone in that call and in your own discernment and your own pursuit of a life with Christ, to have other brothers around you at the seminary that you're all kind of looking at the same thing together, maybe from different angles, and we might all have different life experiences, but ultimately we all kind of get each other in the fact that we think we're called to this life to serve God as a priest. And so there's a richness and a depth, I think, that is available in the types of relationships that you can build here at the seminary.
So you mentioned making meals. I've heard you're a pretty good cook. So what are a couple of your favorite things to cook?
I try. I mean, it was kind of fun during our quarantine time in COVID. It actually, strangely, opened up a lot of opportunities to try to have fun in ways that you didn't before. So we started utilizing the kitchen a lot more and experimenting with a lot of dinners, and it was a great gift to be able to have other brothers who you were kind of isolated with during that time. So made burgers. Every time that there were steaks on sale, we would try to find a way to get some of those. I really like Italian, carbonara. amatriciana, any kind of pasta I can go crazy about. So
Sure. Well, thanks. Now I'm starving, so appreciate that. What would you say is maybe the most challenging part of seminary life?
For me personally, I think coming from an environment like Focus, where it's active ministry on different college campuses, I did a lot of traveling, built a lot of relationships. It was a lot of fun and exciting growth. I led a lot of mission trips across the country, to China, to Russia, to Peru, to Italy, to Ireland, just kind of been everywhere with young college students and seeing God transform their lives in these experiences. It was just fun and vibrant and exciting. And the life at seminary, it isn't really meant to be that.
Sure.
It's actually meant to be a much slower pace. And in the slower pace, I think there's a lot more opportunity to dive deeper into your own relationship with the Lord and maybe like just self-reflection and understanding of yourself. So through spiritual direction and your formator here at the seminary, you have one priest that really checks in with you and walks with you in this journey towards the priesthood. And there's a counselor on campus here at the seminary. And they're all just a tremendous gift for self-reflection and kind of a slower, deeper growth that I think is necessary for men to become priests and to be fully integrated and fully alive in that vocation in the future. So for me personally, it was a big adjustment. It was really hard to let go of kind of the desire. You become a priest, or you join the seminary to try to become a priest because you love serving the people of God. And most of us kind of have that experience, but then in order to do that for the rest of your life, you have to kind of dial it back a little bit and go to class every day and develop a rhythm of prayer and develop different sorts of habits to prepare you again for that life of serving His kingdom.
Sure. How much are you looking forward to the day when you do get to maybe turn the faucet back on a little bit and get back out in the public life and focus on that pastoral ministry aspect of the priesthood?
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Honestly, this past summer was really fun because as a deacon, I was assigned to a parish. I was at St. Therese in Deep Haven, Minnesota. And it was so great and enjoyable to be able to get a taste of life as an ordained person.
Sure.
And to do baptisms, to experiment on preaching, to build relationships with people, and to really kind of be reminded of where people are at in their own journeys and what they desire and need from a future priest. And so as much as I am grateful to have one more year of formation, but just having that taste to be in the world again and to be at a parish and to be walking with people, it only excited me all the more to really give my best this year and then just jump right into it, hopefully in this spring or summer.
Well, that's fantastic. It didn't sound like when we were talking there was maybe like your one kind of aha moment where it was, hey, I'm supposed to pursue the priesthood, but can you dive deeper into that a little bit? I mean, you mentioned how unique it is. I don't know if radical is the right adjective, but if you think of it from an outsider's perspective, like why would a young, outgoing, extroverted dude with a great mustache, right? Like why go pursue this life that is very countercultural and there's everything that comes with that between celibacy and kind of getting shepherded from parish to parish and just like all the things you quote unquote give up. I mean, what drives someone in your shoes to pursue that,
So a big kind of moment for me just in my own conversion, I think, to Jesus was my sophomore year of college, spring semester. I spent a semester in Rome through the Catholic Studies program here at St. Thomas.
Cool.
And I didn't sign up because I really was excited to study any Catholic studies or anything like that. I just had some friends that wanted to do the program. I knew I wanted to study abroad in Rome. Or I knew I wanted to study abroad, and Rome sounded awesome.
Yeah.
So, my first year and a half at St. Thomas, honestly, was just dinking around.
Yeah.
Kind of a typical college
Experience,
life
yeah.
and experience.
Everything that goes with that, yep.
Yep. And it was that semester in Rome, even just the beginning, those people, like the group was, they were like committed to going to daily mass.
Yeah.
And I was like, you don't have to go to mass. Like, why would you go during the week, you know? Like, I was just kind of there in the beginning to have a lot of fun with the friends that I signed up with. And we did have a lot of fun. But slowly but surely, through the classes that I took, I studied theology, philosophy, art history, and there was something that I think was just washing over me about the tradition and the beauty and the depth of the Catholic Church and things that I never knew about before. And I was building relationships with priests. I was seeing kind of their vocation as something joyful and attractive. I started to kind of question a lot of things in my own life, like what does it mean to actually profess faith in God? I always believed in God, but like what does that mean to be Catholic? What are some of the things that are hard for me to believe about the Catholic Church? All that's kind of going on as a 20-year-old studying abroad in college. And there was one moment in particular that I was obviously graced by the Holy Spirit just working on me. It was actually through a piece of art that we studied in my art history class. It was a calling of Saint Matthew by Caravaggio.
Wow.
And I remember we studied it in class, and I had an awesome art history professor, Dr. Liz Lev, and she's pointing out all the symbolism and imagery and telling kind of the story behind it. And then I remember going to the church, finding it, and looking at it by myself. And you had to put those little coins in the the little box to turn the light on, to shine the light on the painting. So I kept putting in little coins, and it was just as beautiful. I was just struck by it because it's Jesus kind of dramatically reaching across the room. He's on the right side, and he's pointing with the same kind of gesture, and that with his two fingers, that's on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah, like God reaching out to humanity that everybody is familiar with. Yeah.
And so it's the same gesture, and it's Jesus calling Matthew. And Matthew, I saw as the man hovering over his money, and he's still counting his money, and he's barely aware of the presence of Jesus in the room. And it's just this dramatic scene, and people are kind of like shocked by the fact that Jesus is calling Matthew a sinner, a tax collector.
Yeah, right.
And in that moment, I don't know, the Lord was just at work, and I saw myself in Matthew, and I saw myself like still very much a sinner, like very aware of the ways that I was not living an upright life, a righteous life, a virtuous life.
Sure.
And yet I felt like it was Jesus kind of just telling me, like, I know everything you've done. I know who you are, but I'm still calling you to a life with me. And it was just really kind of emotional and kind of a moving experience for me to know that, like, I think the Lord still wanted me and loved me even through all of my, like, mistakes, you know? And it instilled a lot of hope, I think, to really actually work on, changing my life.
Sure.
And I think, to be honest, something I think in there, it was like this feeling that, like, my life is meant to be lived for Him, And I think it was the beginning of just like
that planted the seed.
Planted the seed of the vocation.
Sure.
And it's just a powerful moment.
Yeah, so if there was one kind of turning point, that was it. So,
but then in my time in focus, obviously, like kind of I said earlier, just being an instrument of God, encountering young people, and I mean, because in that moment, even in front of that painting, I think what hit me so much was kind of the all or nothing mentality, that this faith, if Jesus is who He says He is, and the gospel message is true, and if this Catholic faith is real, that it's actually everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like it sheds meaning on everything that we ever do for the rest of our lives. And actually our end goal is different than what the world tells us. And so there was this sort of like radical call that's just like, okay, all for Christ, you know? And so I came back and I wanted to like learn and grow in my faith the rest of my college experience.
Sure.
Vocationally too, like during my time in Focus, there were some girls I asked out, and some were longer than others, and kind of in those experiences, there was just this kind of like prompting in the back of my mind, like they were incredible women, and like, but there was kind of this lingering like question, like, is this it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, is this, like, I don't know. The Lord kind of, there was always a question of the priesthood in the back of my mind.
Sure. That opened the door. So, born and raised Catholic.
Yep.
What role has your family played just in the journey?
Yeah.
No one does this alone, right?
Yep.
So.
No, I've been blessed. My parents were part of the charismatic renewal.
Sure.
And I don't know when that would have been. They both went through pretty big conversion experiences.
Sure.
And they joined the Church of Saint Paul in Ham Lake.
Yep, very familiar.
Yep. And so growing up, like I never like, I think dove into any sort of faith myself, or like wasn't really involved in my parish personally.
Sure.
But my parents were. They were active. And I always had their witness, I think, on my mind. Like, just watching, like, their faithfulness, their love of the church, their faithfulness to prayer. Like, I could see them when I was a kid. We have a little room in the front of our house. It's kind of like, we have, like, icons and paintings, and it's, like, where they pray. Like,
It's fantastic.
I have memories of my dad, you know, just reading his Bible. I have memories of my mom praying the rosary, like, and so it's just so cool, because at the time you just take it for granted, I think, growing up, because by the time I get to high school, I just don't really care about any of that.
Yeah.
I'm worried about so many different other things, like being popular, girls, sports, like, and just having fun with my friends in a social life. But then you go off, I think, later in life, and you realize the impact that they had. My whole family, I have 3 older brothers, 2 of which are married. I have 3 nephews, and it's just been, I realize what a gift it is. They're all behind me in the vocation. That's
huge.
Like, they're supportive. And what's cool, too, is I think they all see it, too. Yeah. They can all see the fact that their youngest brother is probably called by God to be a priest.
Yeah.
And so I think having an environment that gave a lot of freedom to discern the call was actually huge for me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
Maybe one other person outside your family who's had the most influence on you, and why?
Recently, the Father Tim Nolan was the founding pastor of Saint Paul's in Ham Lake.
Yeah.
And so he was there, I don't know how long, don't quote me on it, but like about 25 years or so. So growing up, he was, I mean, he was on fire for the Lord, lived kind of out of the resurrection, you know, like he believed in the gospel, and the gospel message was one that was joyful and needed to be kind of proclaimed. And he would come over to my parents' house. They had kind of a dinner group. He was always laughing. He was normal. He was social. He was jovial. And for most of my life, I realized that, like, that was the image of a priest that I had. And so he just passed away, actually, a couple of weeks ago. And so at his funeral, I was able to MC the Mass. And, you know, I was actually really moved and emotional, just like recalling, I think, I don't know. I realize how rare he was as a priest, but then seeing, I think, the impact that he had on hundreds, if not thousands of people was really moving for me as I'm entering my last year in formation and about to be ordained a priest in May. And my prayer was really just like, Lord, like do your work. Like, my life is yours. Help. Like, I hope someday to be a positive example and role model of a priest for for another person in the future, and to be like used as an instrument, like you used Father Tim, and his joy and his steadfastness and his faithfulness. Like, I don't think I realized it until later in life that like he had, like, the way he lived his priesthood was so attractive, and like my whole family just like loves him. Like he would celebrate St. Patrick's Day at my parents' house.
Wow.
As kind of a late tradition, and he just entered right into our family. He called us his family, and I don't know, to be able to have that image or that gift, to have a relationship and a friendship with this man. He was 82 when he died, but he was my friend.
Yeah. And
he mentored me along the way here.
Yeah.
And he left me his chalice after
way.
he passed away. So obviously, I think he's the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And I'm processing the influence that I think he's had on my life.
Yeah, you might learn more as time goes on, too. So we mentioned cooking. What else are you into in your very limited free time?
I kind of like everything. Honestly.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I like traveling.
Yeah.
I like bars, restaurants, breweries. Love the Vikings, unfortunately.
Sorry to hear that. No.
Fantasy football.
Great. Yeah.
Love watching sports. Love going to sporting events. Love going to concerts. I love music.
Any particular genres or?
Yeah, like indie, folk, rock.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But even a lot of different music I like too.
Sure.
Probably everything but rap.
Yeah. Fair enough. What saint or saints are you most devoted to or identify with? And,
Saint Therese is huge for me.
Because of simplicity or?
Yeah. I just kind of had a moment on a mission trip to France that like...
No big deal.
I just like felt like, I don't know, there was something powerful there for me.
Yeah.
I never really got the whole craze about Saint Therese before.
Sure.
She was hard for me to relate to.
Sure.
She's this like little girl who's like,
right.
I just want to be God's princess, or just, I want to be as small as I can be so that the Lord can lift me up into his. I was like, what is this? Like, it's not how I relate to the Lord.
Sure.
But struck by, I think, I went to Lisieux, and then I was told that almost 1 million people come to Lisieux every year, and she has one of the most read books in the world. I'm like, what is it? Like, she died at the age of 24 or something?
Yeah.
And like, why? And then it just got me thinking, like, and I was reading a lot of her readings, and like, she like didn't even do anything. She like never left France, did she? Or like, she's just this little girl who joined the convent super early and just loved the Lord.
Completely.
She loved Jesus. And look at the impact that had. Just like in her own relationship with Jesus, the impact that had. And so that was huge for me, and kind of felt like she's been praying for me along the way. So
sounds like it. That's awesome.
St. Joseph.
Sure. Good year for you then.
Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati, St. Maximilian Kolbe, Pope John Paul II. Those would be my...
That's the list. That's your click.
Short list.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Last one for you today, Deacon Mike. You've had a lot of experiences between being at the seminary. You mentioned Focus, all the different places you've been on mission trips. Based on what you've learned, what is one thing that Catholics can do, obviously besides pray, to be a light and to help the church, especially given just kind of the times we live in and the world we live in, the world you're going into as a priest here within a year?
What a great question. I think the thing that comes to mind is to live a joyfully contagious life. That life with Christ, life, a life that loves the church and who she is and what she stands for and how she guides us and shepherds us, should be a life that brings joy to our hearts. And I think we live in a world where maybe people are losing sight of the fact that we're made to be happy. And if we can live a life that is attractive, I think we'll draw people to the Lord. And I think part of that is not letting ourselves be kind of controlled and tossed to and fro by some of the challenges of our society, to really stay firmly rooted and to be joyful in our surety and our life with Jesus Christ.
When you put it like that, it sounds simple. That's fantastic. Thank you for your words of wisdom, Deacon Mike, and thank you for taking some time with us.
Thanks, Phil.
All right. Well, thanks to Deacon Mike for his time, and thank you again for joining us on this edition of the Joyful Catholic Leaders Show. Be sure to subscribe wherever you find your podcasts and follow both the Saint Paul Seminary and St. John Vianney College Seminary on social media and at semssp.org. New episodes drop every month on the first Friday of the month in honor of Our Lady of Fatima and the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus. Thanks for listening, and God bless.